Hello. So here we are today to observe the sun transitioning from the days of the ash tree into the days of the hawthorn tree. And we're going to look at an overview of the second Aicme, which is behind me here on the screen. So the second Aicme is the second quarter of the year. And it begins now with the hawthorn tree, and it goes to the oak tree and the holly tree, then the hazel tree, and then the apple tree for the summer solstice. So basically, it takes us from spring equinox to summer solstice, is a simple way of looking at it. Now, the year in the Ogham Grove is divided into 4 quarters. And the Irish name for each quarter of the Ogham is Aicme. It's spelt Aicme, Aicme. And it just means a group or a tribe or a set of something. So there's 4 sets in the Ogham, 4 groups of 5, and then the additional 4 feda, which we don't use in the wheel of the year, but you can use them in the center of your grove. They came a bit later. Originally, the Ogham was 4 sets of 5, if you like. Curiously, with the second Aicme, beginning after the spring equinox, each letter, which is H for hawthorn and D for oak and T for holly and C with a K sound, col, for the hazel tree, and then quirt for apple. Those 5 consonants are the first letter of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in Gaelic and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in Proto-Celtic languages. And I think even 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in Latin, that they have that sound, if you like. So some people think that the Ogham should begin with hawthorn and the spring equinox. A lot of ancient cultures began their year at the spring equinox. Certainly the agricultural year, not much farming happens before the spring equinox, but after the spring equinox, you can get on with your farming. So there is a logic to seeing the spring equinox as the beginning of the agricultural year. However, Ogham manuscripts going back to the Book of Ballymote say that birch is the first tree, and there is the first Aicme, which we've gone through: birch, rowan, alder, willow, and ash. So yeah, and it's interesting that the first Aicme is kind of born after the winter solstice, the yew tree. And so you get the yew tree winter solstice, and then the first Aicme, which concludes with the ash tree at spring equinox. So by default, you can see the second Aicme being born of the spring equinox onwards. And that's quite interesting because Ireland had 5 guardian trees. That's in old stories. There were 5 guardian trees of Ireland, and 3 of them were ash trees. And the 3 ash trees were all at County Meath, the centre of Ireland, spiritually. It was the centre where the High Kings of Ireland would marry the goddess of the land. And the other 2 guardian trees were yew trees, and they were in County Leinster, south of Meath. So the tree of the winter solstice and the tree of the spring equinox, 2 different ways of beginning the year, one when the sun's reborn and another when the daylight is longer than the previous months, and you can begin the farming, if you like. So there's like an agricultural year after the spring equinox, or the solar new year following the winter solstice. And there are modern pagan type druids who begin with Samhain. They see Samhain as the Celtic New Year. So it's just an example of many different ways of looking at, where do you begin a wheel? You can jump on the wheel at any moment in time, can't you, really, and have a rationale for that being the beginning. So next session, we're going to have a deeper look at the mysteries, which are the 4 quarters of the year. And we're going to go into the star lore of each quarter and how each quarter kind of has a mystery, tradition, theatre to it because of the star lore of each quarter. But this time we're just going to look at the second Aicme on its own. But there does seem to be a pattern, and I'll open this up to a general conversation in a minute because I haven't got a PowerPoint this time. We'll work our way through Hawthorn, Oak, Holly, Hazel and Apple, and we'll just look at those 5 trees and the story that they tell. And it is a bit similar to the first Aicme. If we cast your mind back to the first Aicme, you have the birch tree and Ellen of the Ways being like the sunbeam following the winter solstice. And it takes you to Brigid with the rowan tree and the festival of Brigid at Imbolc. So there's that kind of whoosh from winter solstice to Imbolc, and it kind of has Brigid and Ellen carrying that fire to that Imbolc moment. And then it kind of shifts after Imbolc to a kind of watery nature where you have the alder tree and the willow tree, both trees that love being by the waterside. And then after them, you have the salmon's leap from the salmon weir of Pisces into Aries, which governs the head. So there's that kind of story going on. And the second Aicme has a similar story, evolving from one tree to another tree and so on. So last year, we went around the grove looking at gods and goddesses of each tree and zodiac signs to try and see what patterns we could find. And Hawthorn, where we are right now, Hawthorn, the beginning of this second Aicme, Hawthorn is completely Aries. And at first, when I looked at that, that kind of jarred because I wanted Hawthorn to be the May Queen. I wanted her to be very feminine. And actually, it's there. It's just not in the way that you would expect, So in the classical world, Aries was a goddess. In the classical world, Aries was Athena and Minerva. And both Athena and Minerva in mythology were born out of the head of the father of the gods. So Athena is born out of the head of Zeus and Minerva out of the head of Jupiter, and that's quite interesting because Aries governs the head. Aries is all about the upper cauldron. So there is this feminine, virginal, not needing a male partner, completely empowered in her own right, goddess of the head, of intellect, of the mind, and wisdom, like the owl of Minerva or the owl of Athena. There's that wisdom thing coming from the head and stuff. So that's very interesting. And if you want to comment on that, do so. You can put your microphones on and we'll gradually work forwards. But in Romano-British sculptures, the goddess Brigantia, a variant of Brigid, is Minerva. She has the spear and the helmet and the shield. So in a way, you could see Brigantia as a Hawthorn Aries goddess. You're welcome to comment.
So you're saying that because she's tough, but she still can rule the hearth and the home and yet go to war.
So
That's
there's
what they expected of those women then, correct?
yeah, they're
Until the
very
patriarchy took over.
well. Athena and Minerva is a lovely statue. Is that Brigantia? Annie, can't hear you.
Yes, this is Brigantia. It's copied on that sculpture that you use often in your talks. It's
Yeah.
sculpted off of that one that lives in the shell, the niche.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's Brigantia from Birrens in Scotland. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a massive Celtic
So
tribe
she's
in northern Britain called the Brigantes, and Brigantia was the figurehead of them, the goddess of them. So back to the martial aspect of Athena and Minerva, Aries is governed by Mars traditionally, so is Scorpio, but it's not Mars in a war-like way. It's better to think of Athena and Minerva as the chess players, that they know how to defend. They know how to not be beaten by strategy, so they win by strategy rather than brute force fighting. Whereas Mars as a god is redhead, angry, martial, fight, fight, fight. It's a different kind of, it's a different kind of energy. Athena defends the city. She defended Athens and so on, So it's that brilliant intellect of not being beaten, knowing your defenses, knowing how to think ahead and outmove the person that's trying to attack you. So it's a different kind of martial thing, So the spear is there, just like Hawthorn has thorns, but she also has the shield and helmet. It's a defensive wall of spears rather than a reckless warrior.
I think men are coming back to the idea that woman is capable. They just haven't gotten there yet fully yet, especially with all the diversions. But back in the day, they respected the woman usually made the rules of the household, of the hearth, and she ruled everything. And told the men what to do, and the men weren't afraid of a superior woman. They liked it.
Might have been
That she
afraid of
shared
Boudicca.
that.
It was
Well,
more matriarchal, wasn't it? Celtic
Yeah.
society. It was very matriarchal.
yes.
And looking at the people of Athena and Minerva, I mean, key qualities of them was that it was chastity, it was purity, the virginity, wasn't it? They were very virginal goddesses as well. And I think that's interesting if we're talking about Ellen of the Waves at the first Aicme. And as we're going through the second Aicme, we're heading towards Beltane, which obviously hasn't got a lot to do with chastity and virginity, but it's moving towards that. And you've got the Oak and the Holly Kings fighting over each other on either side. I think that's quite interesting. There's something heading towards that now. I think that's yeah, you can read it, can't you, as it's going through the year now, as a story playing out.
There definitely is, and it's something that's been growing in my awareness for years now, that each quarter of the year has a mystery theatre, and talked about it with Annie before, that it does lend itself to people creating seasonal ceremony or seasonal rituals, defined by the mythology of the trees and the stars and the mythology of those stars, that there are those seasonal theatre things. And that would be a way of dancing with the cycle of the year, wouldn't it? It would be really quite special, and it could potentially set up rites of passage each quarter of the year as well. I often think that, in in an idealized past of living in an Iron Age village somewhere, you'd be in your river valley because you'd need the fresh flowing water, and you'd be surrounded by highlands, ridges, hilltops, and the lower area is where all the farming happens and the domestic life happens, and then higher up the hills is animals grazing, and then right at the top there's hunting and star lore and druids and warriors and stuff. But you would get to know your neck of the woods so well. You would know that every winter solstice, such and such a constellation came over that hill. And at the summer solstice, a different constellation would come over that hill. And your ancestors, your elders would tell you a story that every winter solstice, such and such god or goddess comes out of that hill and they're in the sky at the winter solstice. It wouldn't be so strange and alien as it is to us, that you would know the seasonal stars and your immediate landscape very, very well. And that would be like the gods and goddesses looking over your domestic world. So back to Brigantia as a Minerva figure, she's depicted with an omphalos, which is a sacred stone that goes at the very center of a territory. So it makes her kind of the divine feminine at both, either the center of your grove, the center of your middle cauldron, the center of your being, the center of your town, the center of your country, but also the center of the stars. And the center of the stars goddess is Cassiopeia, in between the winter stars and the summer stars. And she corresponds with Brigantia, with Brigid, with Bridie, Ceridwen, Rosmerta. These are all goddesses at the center point. And then, depending on the season, she's there with her swan, Cygnus the swan, or she's on the river itself, the Milky Way. But then there's a marriage of the center point of your grove or your kingdom and the center point of the stars. So that's there with Aries governing the head, and the salmon's leap at spring equinox from the soles of your feet up your spinal cord to your pineal gland, all has that beginning of this Aicme poetry. I've just been there.
Would you?
Yeah, go on, Franklin.
One of the things about this year was the gods and goddesses of the Grove. Was it? Was that last year? Am I losing track?
That was last year. That was 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah, we looked
But
at.
did you mention? Did you have Brigantia as the Hawthorn, or are you speaking more of her as the second Aicme now? I think.
I think we did, because Athena and Minerva are the classical Aries goddesses, and Brigantia is dressed as Minerva.
Right. So that happened last year. I have those notes somewhere. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so if you look at Hawthorn
thinking.
Tree 2024, go over that conversation.
It's amazing to me. We've been together for like 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah, and that's why I
Blows my
started
mind.
doing Ogham for beginners, because I guess we've almost become a bit of a cliquey group, and for beginners we've moved on. 2022 was basic law, and 2023 was herbalism, and 2024 was gods and goddesses, and this year we're looking at the Grove cards of the forthcoming Oracle deck. But with each Aicme, I'm doing an overview at the beginning. So with the birch tree, we did an overview of the first Aicme, and now we're doing an overview of the second Aicme.
It's very well thought out, Gary.
Making it up as I go.
So, but we're at the top of the cauldron, right? as
So
far as where the
Aries
pinnacle
governs the
there.
head. So Aries is the upper cauldron.
Right.
So that radiant brow is also that very precise intellect of Athena and Minerva, rather than brute strength.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe a lesson to the US and the UK that we need to think our way out of this. But
It's strategy, isn't it?
Mhm.
It's having 3 chess moves ahead of your opponent, kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe a divine intuition, when the fire is on the head, um, you're in the divine state. It could be a divine madness, but it can be a divine
Mhm.
intuition. But it's really it's hard to say where did that idea come from, because it's just like woof, it's
Yeah.
from the divine itself. I was
Very
thinking,
inspiring.
just a observation about the hawthorn is the hawthorn has the big long spikes, the needles, and so when I'm walking in the woods, I'm very aware of the hawthorn, because you don't go quickly past them. You have to be very circumspect when you're approaching the hawthorn. And if it's a line of hawthorns, you really got to go carefully, because those are long, sharp needles.
So the traditional Irish word kennings for hawthorn, for the word it's uatha, which means fear.
Yes.
It's nothing sweet and nice about it. And then the word kennings are a gathering of a pack of hounds, that is to go hunting, blanching of faces, like you're white with fear, and most difficult at nighttime, is what Franklin just said. You can't see the thorns at nighttime,
Right.
so you go around it. It's like, you
As
don't
best you
even,
can.
yeah, so the word kennings for hawthorn are all about its ferocious spikiness, which to me then is Brigantia, Athena, Minerva with her spear. It's not trying to harm anybody, it's protecting herself.
Defense.
It's pointing the spear, pointing the thorns, and if you throw yourself on them, well, that's your stupidity.
But if you get pricked, oh boy, you go back. It doesn't take a lot. You get pricked by
Yeah.
that thorn, you're immediately sent back.
Yeah. And then you go into
Quick,
fairy tales where
subtle defense.
Sleeping Beauty is surrounded by the rose briar, and that the would-be lover has to get past all those thorns if he wants to kiss her awake and all of that sort of stuff. So that leads you into the rest of the Aicme then. So as much as I wanted Hawthorn to be really May Queen, and it is, but she's prickly, I kind of expected the oak tree to be king of the woods and all masculine, like oak is sacred to Zeus and Jupiter and so on. But oak is Taurus, and Taurus is governed by Venus.
Mm.
So with oak, it's actually got a very Venusian, green, verdant. Everything has sprung into life with Taurus the bull, and the oak is holding that very feminine Venus quality, which is more like Venus and Cupid, or Aphrodite and Eros and stuff. In Welsh lore, the goddess Blodeuwedd was made of the flowers of oak, broom, and meadowsweet. So even in Welsh lore, the oak is a flower of the flower goddess. But then the story of Blodeuwedd is that she's the love interest between 2 warriors. One is Llai, an obvious summer king, The other is Gronwer, who's a lord of the other world, a kind of a lord of Hades, if you like, lord of the hunt. So you kind of have those two types, kind of simplistically summer and winter fighting over a beautiful spring maiden. And that's in the story of Killuch and Olwen, which I've just been writing about for volume 6 of The Grove, which is all about the hawthorn. And in that story, it also has the Winter King and the Summer King, Gwyn ap Neath and Gwythyr ap Gridor, fighting every May Day to win the goddess of nature, Cridillad. So that whether it's Killuch trying to win Olwen, whether it's Blodeuwedd and two lovers fighting for her, whether it's Gwyn ap Neath and the Summer King fighting over the goddess of spring, that's part of the poetry that takes us from Hawthorn to Oak to Beltane. And Beltane then is this time of Oak King, Holly King, two lovers fighting for the maiden. Now, coinciding with Oak taking us to Beltane, and Oak being Venus, goddess of love, in the Roman Empire, and remember the Britons were Romanized for 4 centuries, pretty much. Beltane was covered by a 6-day festival called Floralia. And Floralia was all about the flower goddess. And her celebrations were very sexy, lots of nudity. And when Christianity came along, it soon put a stop to that kind of thing, you know. But again, it's that hawthorn, it's Venus, it's the sap rising up the stems, it's the petals opening, it's very sexual. And by sympathetic magic, the rites of May and the Floralia was all about lovers going off into the woods. If the people are fertile, the land is fertile. That kind of sympathetic magic.
I found that one reference, very obscure, several years ago, where it said that the hawthorn smelled of a woman, her vaginal area. You know, there's a scent there, so it just can't be not denied, but it was not unpleasant. But they did, young women bought the branches into the home, right? And hooray, hooray, the 1st of May, outdoor things begin today. So I think that's the beginning of the burgeoning of the melding of the land and the sexuality. You know, that's always been very interesting to me. Hawthorn is beautiful, but it's deadly. Smells great too.
Yeah, it's good medicine. I learned this so many years ago in Glastonbury. A friend of mine called Steve taught me how to do it, and it's you just get a bottle of mead, very Celtic, you know, honey alcohol, and you pour it all out into a jug, and then you cram the bottle full with hawthorn blossom, and then you pour as much mead back in as you can and bottle it up. So you're getting the hawthorn blossom essence impregnated with the mead. And then in the winter time, it's a perfect remedy for seasonal affective disorder and stuff. It's like having a bit of Beltane in a bottle, a bit of sunshine in a bottle. You know.
That would be lovely.
Very, very wonderful.
Yeah. Bottling the May Queen.
Yes.
Yuri, I would suspect that we would find some references to the thunder as well, because it's a time of year when the battle between Gwydymnydd and Gwythyr of Bridal, winter and summer, and we have the thunderstorms coming, and the lightning related also sexually to
Yes.
Yeah.
So there is a trinity of Celtic gods in Gaul, and one of them is Tyrannus, and he is the thunderbolt god. And so the oak tree would be his tree. And there's Isus, which appears to be depicted with a willow tree in Paris. And who's the third one? Can't remember. What one's got a wheel and a thunder. Tyrannus, Tutatis.
Tyrannus.
So there's Isus, Tyrannus, and Tutatis. And I think Tyrannus is the thunderbolt god, often depicted with a wheel and a lightning bolt. I think I might get him muddled up with Tutatis. I'm more knowledgeable about the Welsh stories than Gaelic figures, but they do seem to be a triple god. Those three figures, like a triple Mercury around a year.
They're uncannily universal too. They're they call them archetypes because Jung found them in stories all around the world. Similar figures, different names, but very identifiable.
Mhm.
So I'm living in the Brigantia area, right where Whalley is, and Whalley has an omphalos, and then I have the Three Rivers. And at winter solstice, I went down to the Three Rivers, which is quite an important place for me. And I stood there, directly above me was Cassiopeia. So I'm just wondering whether, I'm just thinking that maybe this year, as we turn over to each Aicme, I'll go down on a clear night and look above and see what constellation is directly above me. Whether Cassiopeia is still there or whatever's directly above. If I can see that would be an interesting thing to do, actually.
Yeah, especially as you're talking about rivers, because Cassiopeia is on the Milky Way, and the Milky Way is a river.
Well, that river that I talk about, the Ribble, the goddess in that river is Bellissima, and Bell means beautiful, as in Beltane. So it's the beautiful goddess Bellissima. And then when I looked up Bellissima, it actually means Bridget, or it means Bridget of Brigantia, or Brigid. So it's interesting that Bellissima means that name, and then we talked again about Ellen being the first birch tree of the first Aicme. And then also she comes up again of the first tree of the second Aicme of Hawthorn. Like birthing through both of the Aicmes, which is interesting, because you've got in Ireland you spoke about the yew tree and the ash tree again. So you've got the winter solstice when it's everything's born from. But also we're having a birth right now, because it's like the virgin of Hawthorn, the young's bringing forth. So it's like two birthing moments: the winter solstice, and then this the great ash tree birthing through to the Hawthorn. So I'm going to go down as soon as I get clear now. I'm going to just check out what's above me to see if it's still Cassiopeia. At that point, it's just where the Tolkien trail is. We spoke about it before.
Yes.
I'm going to say, but I was really surprised
Cassiopeia.
because directly above was Cassiopeia, as clear as day. And you just mentioned that is the centre, Cassiopeia.
Okay, Bridget. Franklin, and then Wanda, please.
Just that Cassiopeia is circumpolar, so it's kind of like a clock. In the wintertime, she'll be high overhead at midnight. In the summertime, she'll be real low on the horizon at midnight. In the spring she'll probably be in the western sky at midnight, and in the fall she'll be in the eastern sky at midnight. So it's like she'll always be somewhere in the sky because she's circumpolar, and depending on the season, it's like a clock. You can see, where she is,
It's moving.
high, low, or to the left or the right of the North Star.
Wonderfully.
Oh, I just wanted to say that I love that we're beginning an Aicme with Hawthorn, because I was thinking about Ysbyddaden, the hawthorn tree, the giant in the Olwen story. Him being the hawthorn, he's like the thorn part, and it's that list of impossible, crazy tasks that he sends the young man out on that kind of like it initiates tons of changes within that realm for people. Like you end up with things like the battle between Gwyneth Neave and all these, and there's seeds that are planted that were previously not growing. The big pig is gone. But then the feminine side, Olwen is the blossoms, the white blossoms, and she's the daughter of the hawthorn. And I just really loved that. And the more I've really been digging into that story, and the more I dig into it, the more weird things I notice.
It's a mad
It's a lot of
story.
weirdness. Yes.
I've just written a 40-page essay about it for volume 6 of The Grove, looking at the star law motifs in it.
I can't wait.
One of them is Ysbyddaden. When he agrees that they can get married, he wants the 3 birds of Rhiannon to sing for him at the wedding feast. And the 3 birds of Rhiannon are the summer triangle. So how are you going to get the summer triangle to sing at the wedding feast? And you can't catch Truith without Gwyneth Neath. Well, Gwyneth Neath is part of the winter hexagon. So there's this winter asterism and summer asterism in the requests that Ysbyddaden is making. And right at the end, he gives all of these demands. There's 39 demands, and then there's a 40th, but the 40th isn't a demand, it's a statement. And after giving 39 impossible demands, the 40th is sleeplessness and no rest at night will be yours, trying to figure these things out. That is you're going to be staring at the stars to figure this out.
I can't wait for that volume to come out.
Yeah, sleeplessness and no rest at night will be yours. So yeah,
When is that coming out?
the story is mad, absolutely mad, and it's quite a blood fest. It's gory, the things that happen in it. So many people get killed, and I was just thinking, this is like a 13th century X-rated horror film, really.
And then Kai gets mad at Arthur and is like, I don't want to talk to you anymore because of Arthur's bad poetry.
And then when Arthur's first mentioned historically, it's in something called the Historia Britannum by Nennius, and it's said that Arthur has 12 battles. And then there's also some marvels at the end of the book. One of them is a dog's footprint in a rock, which was done by Arthur's dog when they were hunting the great boar. Had left his footprint in this rock. So there's some people that think that the 12 battles of Arthur are the same as the 12 labors of Hercules. That they're not physical realm things. It's more about adventures across the night sky. And in Killuch and Olwen, every time they achieve one of the crazy tasks, Arthur says, which wonder shall we do next? So it's like they're very aware that they're labors of Hercules or they're impossible wonders. And here's something I didn't pick up on before. Arthur's court is in Cornwall, and it's called Kellywig. And Kellywig translates as Forest Grove.
Wow.
So Arthur lives in a forest grove, and when Killuch knocks on the door at the beginning, he's met by the gatekeeper, and this gatekeeper says, "I'm only here on the first day of January. The rest of the year, there are 4 other deputies." So like the Forest Grove court is divided into 4 deputies, but there's one figure like Janus on the 1st of January. So it's kind of like, hang on a moment, this is a Forest Grove and it's a year cycle. And according to the Welsh law, Arthur has 3 queens and they're all called Guinevere. Oh, come on. So this is a Forest Grove Arthurian court, 12 labours of Hercules across the night sky, 4 deputies in this Forest Grove, dividing the year into 4 quarters, a triple goddess. It's insane that the whole thing is just like.
Yes.
So that's
When
what
is
I've been
volume
writing
6
about.
going to be out? Gary?
Mid to late April, before Beltane.
Okay.
Turk Truith is like a degenerate old god whose time has come, and Arthur is the young solar king who's going to replace the degenerate son.
We need a
Yeah.
young solar king.
I go quite deep into it because some of the impossible demands, as well as being star things like the 3 birds of Rhiannon, some of them are in the 13 treasures of Merlin, 13 treasures of Britain. So there's a cauldron that belongs to a giant in Ireland. That's one of them. And a hamper belongs to Gwythno Garin here, where Taliesin was found in his salmon weir. There's so many overlays. It's just ludicrous. But some of it goes back to King Arthur takes his men to Ireland. They steal this cauldron. There's a gleaming sword slashing around, and they race back to Wales. And that's in the Spoils of Annuin by Taliesin. It's the same thing. It's the same cauldron. They all travel in Arthur's ship Prydwen, except for in the Spoils of Annuin, they go to Annuin instead of Ireland. But it's the same adventure to take this cauldron. And then when you start peeling back the layers, in the Welsh, the boar is Tuach Truith. And then in Irish mythology, in the Book of Invasions, it explains that the goddess Brigid has certain sacred animals, and she has a boar, the king of boars, and his name is Tuach Truith.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, you've got the Welsh Arthurian adventure stealing the Dagda's cauldron and chasing Brigid's king of boars, but it's not said that in the story. The names have changed, but it's the same. It's still Tuach Truith, just spelt differently. And in Killick and Olwen, the boar is a monster, and in Ireland, it's a sacred animal of Brigid. How do you make sense of that? You know, yeah, lots to unpack. Yeah, lots to unpack.
I get the feeling from the.
Sorry, Franklin.
I get the feeling from the Spoils of Annuin that we're being told that life has got to be lived with absolute passion and even risk. If we're going to win the cauldron of inspiration, and our name is going to live forever, then we have to live, with real zeal and take the extraordinary risks that are necessary to. And this is what Arthur did. Arthur and his men, when they went to Anwin and stole the cup, They just, and that's why the story is still there, because it's, you know, that's how they live forever, is in the story. But to get to the story, they had to live life to the fullest.
Yeah.
Total abandon. Yes.
Just jumping ahead.
Like that.
Just jumping ahead for the rest of this Aicme then. So after Beltane, you get to Holly, and Holly takes us from Taurus into Gemini. And with Gemini, there's the twins. And in the mythology of the twins, one is mortal and one's immortal. And that's played out on either side of Beltane with oak and holly. One's a deciduous tree, one's an evergreen. And so I've come to see that as aspects of ourselves. You know, we have our mortal incarnation that will die, but we are eternal selves as well. So that oak and holly thing is a duality within us, you know, that we're trapped in our mundane life story, but we're eternal as well. You know, so that seems to be played out, and that's mystery school stuff then with the Gemini twins that take us to the summer solstice. The summer solstice is the cusp between Gemini and Cancer, the crab. So the star pattern for the ecliptic of this is Orion the hunter facing off against Taurus the bull. Orion is part of the Gemini area. You've got the great hound, Canis Major, the Gemini twins, and the Orion figures, very Mithraic. You know, it's Mithras with the two twins and the dog licking the blood from the bull that's being killed. So that's Taurus, Gemini, and so on. But we looked at it last year. I think it's in the holly tree or the hazel tree. But the story of Lugh throwing either a spear or a sling into the eye of Balor and defeating the Fomorians is Orion throwing his weapon into Taurus the bull, the bullseye, the Aldebaran. That's played out there. And in the Irish story, all of the Fomorians are lending their energy to Balor. They're trying to make him as big as possible by siphoning their energy to him. And all of the Tuatha De Danann push all of their energy into Lugh. So Balor gets bigger and bigger, and Lugh gets bigger and bigger, and the forces of light and darkness are having this final standoff. And Lugh throws his weapon into the Balor's eye, and Balor's defeated. And then in the darkness, glittering, is a shiny thing. And Lugh reaches down and pulls out this shining, radiant sword and gives it to Ogham, who created the Ogham writing system. And that takes us to the summer solstice, where you've got Excalibur in the Summerlands with Avalon and all the rest of it, and Mithras pointing to the summer solstice with his sword. So we had the spear of Lugh with the spring equinox, and we'll have the sword of Nuada, the sword of the king, with the summer solstice. But that's part of the story of this Aicme too. There's a lot there.
That was the sword of terror. That was the sword of terror that was able to reveal the spells placed upon the Doida's harp, so that the Doida was able to bring the harp back and begin to play the seasons, so that the seasons returned into their proper power and in their order. And when the Fomorians had stolen the harp, one day followed another, brave, foggy days, rainy, cloudy days. There was no seasons.
And one of the three birds of the summer triangle is Lyra the harp.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the sword to the summer solstice takes you to Lyra the harp as well.
We're seeing glimpses of an ancient culture that lived under the stars and told stories by the stars. And not just seasonal, but there were horizon stories, you know, like at a certain hour, like at story time, there would be a whole ring of constellations around the horizon, and those were story cycles. And then that was another season, another ring.
That's what I was saying about you would know your area very well, and you would know what stars came up each year. And visiting poets would tell you stories about the mythology of the stars, you know, and there would be tribal differences, but that's why you get so many different goddess names and so on, or variations on a story, because it's a variations of tribe to tribe.
And the stories could probably go on for months on end.
Yeah.
And finally, tie things together, and it's just been brilliant oral tradition.
So everything we've spoken about this evening has just been for the second Aicme. And so next time with the oak tree, we're going to be looking at all 4 Aicmes and the seasonal stories of the year, if you like. And of course, from now until summer solstice, we're going to visit the oak tree, the holly tree, the hazel tree, and the apple tree. So we'll be going over some of this again. But yeah, amazing that, it's kind of like the night sky is your cinema, and it's a seasonal cinema, and your gods and goddesses are the main characters in that cinema, and you live under it and you're part of it. That's mad, isn't it?
And there's one more wrinkle, and that is, just like in our mind, we have at the ends of the neurons are dendrites, and at the ends of dendrites are these little packets of chemicals that send out electrical signals that leap to the next dendrite in the next cell. They can create, chain reactions in the mind. So these packets of chemicals that can be turned into electrical sparks are what's going on in the galaxy. Up above, there's the mind of the creator. And just as our mind works, the mind of the galaxy is at work. But, the mind of the galaxy is like on a whole higher level of intelligence and compassion. But we're like little fractals of that same experience. So we're under the stars telling stories. Tremendous inspiration can come from the living galactic mind.
That's amazing, thinking about the center point then. So like your pineal gland is the center of that mycelium neuro network, and the center of your grove or your middle cauldron is your center point on the planet, if you like, and then you're aligned with the pole star and the center of the star realm and everything. So all of those center points are crackling away, and what's that, universal consciousness or something,
Yes.
And the image itself contains soul's energy. Like an image can literally transmit energy. That's why people, use icons, because you study the icon and you can get a spiritual jolt. And all the images in these stories contain these jolts of power. So these are really stories of power. And as we study them, and not just study them, but internalize them, take them in and learn them, then the power is fertilizing, and it can give us chi, this incredible energy that seems to transcend the physical. You can do things that seem nearly impossible, but it's because the images themselves contain this miraculous energy that can give us great power.
Mm.
This is what Yuri's art does.
There is a theory out there that says that you are the center of the world. The fact that there's synchronicity is 3 things: it's time, place, and circumstance. You don't have any control over time. You don't have any control over place, but you do have control over circumstance. So you're the master of your own destiny. If you look at the 4 Aicmes, if you're looking north, you're looking at the birch. If you're looking east, you're looking at the hawthorn. If you're looking south, if you're looking west, that is the 4 Aicmes. Depending on where you are on the earth, depending on which direction you look in. Earlier it was mentioned that someone said they go down to where the point of the three rivers. So they go down to the point of the three rivers where the three rivers meet. You are the center of the earth. The three rivers have joined you. You have created your own circumstance. That is the point of power. That's exactly what you were saying, Franklin. That is the point of power. That is the point where you become all central. That is where you can sense the earth. You are the center of the earth. When you look at the hawthorn and you look at the flowers from the hawthorn, you look at the petals from the hawthorn, that's confetti. That's the origins of confetti. Now, everyone's given this today, it's been very sinister. The hawthorn has been very sinister, very dark. But the hawthorn is the defender of faith. Once the petals dissolve, it shows the berries. You can take the berries without taking the thorns. But the hawthorn is the defender of faith. It's a fairy tree. It's a magical, beautiful. It will enhance all of your senses to stand in the presence of hawthorn. If you look at the hawthorn with the confetti, it's where you get married after a year and a day. The reason you get married after a year and a day is you've collected all of the confetti from the hawthorn. The year and a day is the month you're going into the oak. It's the merry month of May. It's why everybody gets married in May. And you use the confetti to scatter underneath the oak. You're sheltered under the umbrella for the umbrella of the oak. It's a magical, beautiful, amazing tree. And it's all been missed tonight. But the magic of the hawthorn, the magic of the present, the magic of circumstance and moving into that energy, to stand in the essence, the spirit of hawthorn is an amazing thing.
Thank you.
In the first Aicme, it's not surprising it's the first tree in the Aicme.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of see birch as, the pioneer of the first Aicme, and hawthorn is the pioneer of the second Aicme. It's almost like it's all about them, really.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so.
Or hawthorn is going to take us to the summer solstice, like birch took us to the spring equinox, if you like. They're if you're on a ship, they're the figurehead, aren't they?
Yes.
They're taking us.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. But Bruce, thank you for saying all of that. Definitely. Yeah. Okay. We better do our meditation. So I'll stop recording and put your microphones off.